Alright, so we're back here. I decided to extrude this inward. All I did was connected this piece right here so there wasn't an in-gon. And then I did the multi-cut tool from this edge and I just drew a line right across here so that I could extrude it in better. Simple stuff, and just move the verts around. And then I connected this bottom piece by just beveling, or sorry, not beveling, bridging all these edges together. So, simple stuff. Alright, so here we are. Let me move this over a little bit. Now what we're going to do, I also took these verts and just moved them down a little bit, make it a little bit more interesting in the front here, so it wasn't completely flat at the top. So last thing we're going to do is do this little metal piece right here, which goes right next to the window here, and then we're going to do the ropes. So let's start with the metal piece. So it's kind of hard to see how that metal piece is shaped there. What we can do here is take this face and duplicate it. And then move it out just a little bit. And now we can move the verts around that piece to better fit that shape there. So like I said, it's kind of hard to see what shape that is. So what I'm going to do, it looks like this line that matches the angle of this window right here. So I'll leave this edge the same as it is. I might move this guy down. It looks like it actually comes over this plank right here. Move this way over here and push it in a little bit. That way when I extrude it, push it in just a tad. I can just pull it straight out like that. I can move these verts a little bit. Let's make it a little bit more interesting looking. Something like that maybe. Yeah. That should work fine. I think that captures the shape close enough there. That's going to look really good whenever we add the texture onto it. So I'm going to take this guy, separate it, and grab one of these bolts here. I'm going to duplicate it. I'm going to go to Edge, double click, and go to Fill Hole. And then I'm going to use that Snap Together tool again. So I'm going to click on the Snap Together, click on that face, and then I'll click roughly about right there. Oops. Not Node Editor, go to Outliner. And I'm going to ungroup that. There we go. And now let's try that. Had a little bit of a weird shading issue going on there. There we go. And those remaining tiny bolts right there, I can just paint in on the texture. I'm not worried about it. So now isolate this. Now remove this face again. We don't want those back faces, just a waste of space on the texture sheet. Alright, save it. Now the last thing we're going to do is the ropes. So the ropes are going to have a different technique to them. Sorry. So we're going to use curves for these ropes. Let's go to the side view here and move this over a little bit. It looks like we have a couple of them that are going straight down into that axe there. So it looks like we have one at the base and one at the top. And then we have one connecting about right here. So we're going to be doing 3 of them then. Yeah. So let's go to EP Curve Tool. So go Create, Curve, EP Curve Tool. I want to click about right here. And then click right there. Right there. And that creates a tool or a curve right there. So now we're going to do it again. Create Curve Tools, EP Curve Tool. And we're going to do one about right from there to there. I'm going to add one more because it looks like there's one more right along here. So we're going to do a Create, EP Curve Tool, maybe about right there to right there. So now we have those 3 curves right there. So we can go to Control, hold right click and go to Control Vertex. We can start moving those around a little bit. And if you wanted to make them completely straight, I'll show you how to do that in a second here. But I'm not too worried about making completely straight curves here. I'm going to be a little bit more dynamic than that. So I'm just moving them into place however I feel would best look. That one I like this straight one right here. I might maybe have a little bit of a curve to it. Well, maybe about right there. Yeah. Alright. Now we got a couple more ropes to go here. So it looks like there's 2 that come from the other side of this. Right here. 2 or 3 of them. Let's go back into the side view here. Create EP Curve. And I'll put one about right there and right there. And I'll do the same thing there and right there. And I kind of want them to be on both sides of this, so I'm going to change it up just a little bit. I'm going to move this curve over here a little bit so it's right. It meets this this border edge of the ship here. I'm going to take this curve. I'm going to move them maybe about right there. I kind of want to do it the same as the other side. Go to Control Verts and just move them up just a little bit. Yeah. Something like that. I might make this guy a little bit more angled here. There we go. Looks kind of cool. Alright. So we got, looks like we have maybe one or two more to go here. So I'm going to have one that goes up this way, right into the base of this sail right here. And then we have one that sort of hangs down from the sail. And we can duplicate that over. Yeah. Yeah. Something like that, maybe. Maybe not as much of a curve right there. Now I'm going to have one that hangs down from there. Yeah. And we can adjust these curves here once we make them. To edit the Bezier curves on these, so you have the control verts right here, and each one has two handles right there and right there, and that's how you control the curve. And you can also push them in or turn them. Pushing them in condenses the curve a little bit. Yeah, something like that. Alright, so I'm going to duplicate this on the other side, but first I'm going to actually make the geometry. So I'm going to go to Polygon, Cylinder. I'm going to make it roughly, let's see here, maybe 6, 7, 8, 2, 6. I think 6 will be alright. Since they're so small. take all the faces but the top faces and delete them. Center pivot and scale it down. Alright, so I'm going to take each one of these curves along with that piece and isolate them. Now here's where it gets a little tricky. It's supposed to work, doesn't always work. You're able to snap something to a curve. Like I said, it doesn't always work, but sometimes it does. So the goal here is to hold C, or hold C, and the middle mouse button. And then you can supposedly click on a curve, and there you go. If you notice, it's snapped onto that curve. So if you hold C, there we go. If you hold C, it's now running along that curve. No matter where I move my mouse, it's running along that curve. So I'm going to duplicate that guy. I hope these aren't a little too thick. Let me make it a little bit smaller here. That should be good. And you can hold C and make sure that your mouse is right in the center there, and then you can drag alongside that curve. So I'm going to Control D to duplicate. Hold C again and middle mouse button. And I might have to move it closer. There we go. Sometimes it takes a couple of clicks of the middle mouse button to do it. Alright. So I'm going to duplicate that a couple more times. Control D. And the reason it disappears whenever I zoom in so much is because of the camera. The near clip plane can be shortened a little bit. Just to do that, click on Channel Box and click on this button right here, Camera Attributes. Oops, there we go. And now see this near clip plane, you can lower it. Right now it's very low, but the reason it's clipping so whenever I zoom in is because these are so small. So I could shorten that to maybe like 0.2 or 0.1, but it's already really low, so I'm not going to worry too much about it. I can just work from this angle. There you go. Cool. So I'm just going to keep doing this here. And again, hold C and the middle mouse button on clicking on the curve. So middle mouse click on the curve. It's kind of difficult to do at first. And it takes a couple clicks sometimes. There we go. It's a little finicky. A little more finicky than the other snap buttons. So let's see, we've got 5 so far. So duplicate it again. There you go. And duplicate it one last time. Actually, what you can do, which is what just worked there, is if you do the middle mouse button and then drag along the curve, it looks like it'll snap to the curve. There we go. Alrighty. So now that we have all these in position here, I can select this object and then shift select the curve and go to extrude. Try that again. So sorry, select the faces on this object, and then shift select the curve, and then extrude. And there we go. So this is what's going to happen at first. And it looks like it didn't work. But the reality of that is you just don't have enough subdivisions inside here to get it to create the curve. So all I have to do is just increase these subdivisions, and you'll start to see the curve be created. Pretty simple. Alright. Let's do that for these as well. So make sure to select the faces, not the object. That was my mistake right there. And then shift select the curve. Oh, I know what I'm doing wrong. So, learning tip here. If you're having some funky issues where it's either running back to the center and giving you a loop whenever you just want a line, or something strange like that, the reason for that is because you're not putting it at where you actually started the curve. I didn't start the curve up here. I started the curve down here. So you want to put it at exactly where you started the curve. So hold C and then drag it along to the bottom there. Now that should work. And there you go. I don't remember where I started the curve on this one, but I'm going to assume it was at the bottom. Yep. And only put enough subdivisions so that the curve, you see a nice shape in the curve. Don't put too many, and don't put not enough either. But you don't want extra subdivisions that aren't doing anything. Oops. There we go. And since these are a lot straighter, I'm going to do maybe 5 subdivisions. Maybe a little bit more on that guy. Do 6. Do 7. Alright, and last but not least, this dude. We're going to do 5 on that one. Alright, so select all of them, and you click delete history, which is edit, delete by type, history. And now, you might be able to select, here we go, select all by type, these curves at, NURBS curves, there we go, and delete. And now you're left with the geometry. Alright, so last thing you want to do here is just delete the end caps. You don't need them. They're going to be hidden away. Beautiful. Alright. I'm going to take this guy and this guy. I'm going to mesh, combine. I'm going to mesh mirror along the z-axis. So apply. Oops. Try it again. Mesh mirror by world, yes. Let's do a freeze transformations and history first. Well, let's just go ahead and do this. Let's make the center pivot. Hold D, press V. Or press D and hold V, sorry, and center it right to that guy. And then let's go ahead and just do duplicate special. And there we go. Cool. Alrighty. So that's what we got. The reason these are black is because the faces are reversed. So just go to Mesh Display and Reverse. And it'll show up like the rest. So there we have it. Now we are good to start UVing. That'll be fun. One thing I am going to do is select all of these. Here's a little trick here. Isolate them. Go to the Move tool, double click the Move tool, and go to Normal. And now go to Vertex. And you have this funky little thing going on here. So if you drag the N out, it'll either shrink them or thicken them. So we can see here if we wanted to make them thicker, which I did want to make them thicker. They were a little too thin. Something like maybe that. That's looking a little better. Maybe a little more. Had to combine them first. Let's do that. No. Alright, I don't want to make them too thin. I don't want to make them too thick either. Maybe about right there. That looks good. Beautiful. Alright, let's go ahead and display and soften the edges. Cool. Alrighty. So now we do have one more thing to go. We're going to build these little planes right in front of here for this fur coming off top of this. And the way we're going to do that is isolate this, select these faces, and go to duplicate. Oh yeah, by the way, you always want to switch this back to object from normal, otherwise you're going to get some funky things going on. So don't forget to do that. That was my issue there. Alright, so I'm going to put that about right there. And again, these are going to be alphas, meaning that whatever texture I draw on there is going to become the shape of the texture, because I'm going to use black to hide any information I don't want to be seen. So I have maybe another one about right like that. And then I'm going to have another one outward a little bit. And then pull it in. Something like that. And that should look interesting. Yeah. And once I do the texture, if I want to add a couple more, I can always just duplicate these planes and paste the texture onto them and move them around a little bit. Right. So I think we're good, honestly. I was going to extrude some square shapes out, some little rectangular shapes out to match those boards that are sticking out, but I can just do that in the texture and just have it all exactly the way I want it in the texture, and this can just be the foundation for the mesh. So I think we're honestly good here. So save it, and we're going to get started on UVing here. I'm going to UV from the top down, and it's definitely not going to be just one texture file. It's going to be two. Yeah. So to start off with the UVing process, first off, what I'm going to do is I'm going to shrink this a little bit. Now that we're all done with the modeling, we can start adding some final little adjustments here and there. And so I'm going to take all of this and group it together, center pivot, and then pull it in just a little bit to get a little bit more of that wow look. I think that looks a little bit cooler, a little bit more condensed and more interesting looking. Yeah, beautiful. Alright, I'm going to save that. Take everything, delete the history, and freeze the transformations. Now I'm going to start going, I'm going to delete this side. I'm going to delete this guy because that was mirrored over, and so was that. I'm going to take this guy, take all these faces on the side, and delete them. Now is when you start mirroring things over. And take this guy as well. delete that half. Delete this entire half of this ship here. Let's go ahead and fix this. So we want a complete line as a halfway point for this. So if you have any lines that aren't cutting it directly through the center, you want to cut them through. That looks fine. I'm not going to do it to this guy. What I can do, since it's such a simple little texture that's going to be going on there, I don't want it to be duplicated over entirely, because I'm going to have that patch right here, and I don't want it to be obvious that it's duplicated, a patch exactly on the same side, or same placement on each side. So what I'll be able to do is I'll just use this as it is, and I can just duplicate what I want duplicated over in Photoshop, and then I'll just paint over it. So that'll be easy. This guy, however, I do want cut in half here. And I want this guy cut in half. Oops. And this whole side I want removed. And I would like this guy cut in half. Cool. Now I'm going to delete each one of these. And the reason I'm going to is because I'm going to UV one of them and then I'll duplicate it back over. Awesome. Alright, so go ahead and save it. And for these two, we're actually going to have the same texture as well. But I'm just going to do that in Photoshop and make a couple slight differences to each one of these, so I'm not going to delete any of them. But other than that, I think we are good. Let's you can start the UVing here now. Yeah. And I'll just make sure that all these have pretty much the same texture. I'm not going to delete them though, because each one is slightly individual in their shape. So I can just use Photoshop to duplicate the textures around. And that'll be fine. Alright. And I'm also going to delete this guy and this guy. And I'll UV this one guy with that fur texture that I paint, and then I'll move it around and duplicate it and so on and so forth. So it looks different, but it's still the same texture. The way it's more efficient. So I think we are about ready to start UVing now. Oh yeah, this guy I'm going to duplicate as well, or cut in half as well. I'm glad I put that center line in there. Makes life a hell of a lot easier. Alright. So whenever you're ready, at this point, whenever everything cuts